Who do you think has the hottest take on this episode?
Shane.
I feel like we all have the same take, actually, so I'm going to be curious to see how it goes.
Got it.
I don't even know if I wrote my take down, so we'll do it live.
Hello and welcome to episode 304 of The Dive Down, a Magic the Gathering podcast focused on the latest decks, trends, and strategies for the casual spike. My name is Stanislav here in Chicago, and with me on the line from Denver, Colorado, Scratch! Shane ain't here. That was just old habits dying hard.
Whoops.
Devin's not in Denver,
No.
but gosh, I wish you
Well,
were.
not yet. I mean, there is a Spotlight series in Denver coming up, so
Limited.
Doomwake.
limited. Yep.
Limited God of Limited, is that you?
No, I can't even tell you the last time I played limited.
I'm here. I'm listening, Stan. It's me. Do you need help with your draft picks again?
Yeah, the God of Limited, Dave Harvager's here too.
Yeah, not really. But I have been playing a lot lately. There's never time to talk about it on the show, but I think I've done 50 or so Foundations drafts at this point.
So, I'm japing a little bit because that's a Hararuya tournament series in Japan, like the God of Modern, the God of Format. Would we get in trouble if we just stole that in America and if NRG did God of Standard tournaments?
I don't
Yes.
think it's copyrighted. I mean, it depends, right?
You'd be Twitter canceled for that.
Oh boy. I don't think I can handle that again.
No, not a second time.
I can't handle the bots canceling me.
You can't handle AI people commenting on your profile photos in Facebook or bots canceling you.
Yeah, I'm just tired of pissing off Grok.
Yeah. It's me.
Yeah. We all here.
Wait, you're Grok?
I'm Grok. I'm the god of limited Grok.
Yeah. And thank you for gracing us on this week's episode, Grok, because we are
It's the
kicking
Grok
off-
father.
Now you can copyright that.
We're kicking off a mini-series, a dive down 3 to 4 episode plan content calendar on the latest unbans in Modern, starting this week with Faithless Looting, aka The Birds Are Back in Town.
There's not going to be that much about birds in here. Maybe some.
Well, there's probably at least 10 bird matches between
Oh, yeah.
the co-hosts of this show.
Easily.
But first, we got a housekeep. Shout out to the newest patron to join the Dive Down Nation, IPA for breakfast. Too early for the hops. That's what I say to you, IPA.
It's
IPA
never
for
too
podcasting.
early.
More like it. You know what I'm saying?
Voodoo Ranger.
Voodoo Ranger.
Dev, do you like IPAs?
I do. It's my favorite.
It's your favorite.
I'm a big fan of, you guys might not know this one because it's somewhat local to me, but Greater Good.
Mm-hmm.
You know that one?
I think I've had it one time.
It's really good.
Is it just their hazy IPA that you like? Or
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how that can be good. First hot take of the day, IPAs are gross.
And on that note, I'm going to
Well,
end the call.
We were just wondering who was going to have the worst hot take of the day, and that might be
Well,
it.
there you go.
Because I think everything else we have to say about Faithless Looting might be a little more down the middle.
Hey, 2011 called the year I turned 22 and drank IPAs because I thought it made me a sophisticant, and it wants its gross hoppy beers back.
All right, no increased tiers, no new reviews. That's okay. Didn't even get any Spotify comments this week, although the comments were down a little bit, so I'm not sure if they're broken at the moment. But if you'd like to support us the way that IPA for breakfast did, check us out at patreon.com/thedivedown. You can also check out our store at thedivedown.com/store for goods and no services, just goods, really. People have ordered some hats recently. I'd like to remind you, it's probably the best deal on the store. The hats are quite nice. They're embroidered well. You can pick whatever color you want, and they're not crazy expensive. I think they're $30 for a hat, which is not terrible considering you're supporting our podcast by doing that. Mana Traders, our permanent code there at Mana Traders now is the Dive Down if you want to rent some Magic Online cards. You can use that the first time that you sign up. If you stay signed up for a certain amount of time, the rules are a little more complicated than they used to be. It used to be a straight discount. Now, if you stay signed up for a certain amount of time, you get a rebate, and we also get a cut of you staying signed up with Mana Traders. It's kind of how it works. It's a little bit of a bonus program instead of a discount at this time. And then finally, if you'd like to support us by checking out some gear, you can go to heavyplay.com, use our affiliate code, the Dive Down 2024 for 10% off your first order, and we will get a kickback from that. And those are just ways you can support us other than Patreon if you would like to.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you to our fans and friends for supporting us.
Yeah, and that's it, really.
All 304 episodes.
Yeah.
All right, so while the bulk of this episode is about Faithless Looting, I do have a little breakdown section that I've titled Devin Relax.
Why am I relaxing?
Because your competitive performance is off the charts lately, and I'm sick of it. You made the finals twice this weekend in RCQs.
I did.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
In fact, I would even say that you made at least second place both times.
Yeah. That is how
Relax,
that works.
dude.
That is how that works. Yeah, I mean, I just played the same. Well, okay, I kind of played the same deck as last week. In the first RCQ on Saturday, the Celestia Cage deck that we spent the entire episode of last week's episode. Be listeners, if you missed that one, go check it out. I think it's the best deck in Standard, and I played it on Saturday. And I ended up losing one match in the Swiss and one match in the finals to the exact same mono white player who, for those of you who don't know the mono white deck, it's like tokens, control cards, and 4 Sunfalls, which, as I highlighted in last week's episode, is
not good for you, Devin.
Not a card that you want to see as a green-white tokens player.
Right.
So, lost in the finals on Saturday, got home at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And I was like, you know what? I'm planning on playing another RCQ the next day on Sunday. And I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to lose to Sunfall tomorrow. So I had this brilliant idea, 11 o'clock at night, to just add a third color to my deck for no main deck cards. Add 12 blue producing dual lands to play counterspells from my sideboard. 3 Protect the Negotiators and 2 Disdainful Strokes. And did that. Just played a couple of games on Arena to see if the mana was truly atrocious. It seemed fine for the most part. Didn't really have a ton of games, so it's mostly just theory crafting. But yeah, then I brought it to the event on Sunday, and lo and behold, I lost round 1 and then didn't lose again. Won the whole tournament.
Unbelievable. Did you, in fact, face Sunfall decks that you counterspelled and totally freaked them out?
Funny enough, no. So it turns out I didn't need to play the blue mana after all. But there was a couple of spots, even though I didn't play against Sunfall, I did play against a couple of other decks where the counterspells were nice. Namely, there's a new blue-white Omniscience combo deck that's using a 4 mana spell to reanimate Omniscience. Counterspell's pretty good against that. Mm-hmm. And then in top 4, I played against the Sultai, Up the Beanstalk, Talarian Terror, Edinburgh Crab deck.
Right.
And Terror and Crab are both expensive cards that, get hit by Disdainful Stroke. So I boarded those in, and they were pretty good.
There you go. That sounds great. So you just kind of swept the board after the first round.
Yep.
That's awesome. And so that qualifies you for
the regional championship, which is in Hartford, funny enough. So
that's funny. How far? That's not too far from you, yeah?
It's a 45-minute drive.
Oh, 45 minutes. Wow, it's very close. Okay.
Yeah, very close.
When is that one? Is that summer sometime?
I don't actually know, because the next round of RCs in the U.S. are Minneapolis and Charlotte. Or no, sorry, Portland and Charlotte.
Right.
So it's after that run, which I think is April, May, I want to say.
Right.
But I'm not positive.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, Charlotte is in March. Portland is in February. So I'd imagine that these two might be in May, June, April, May, something like that. I would be surprised if there were 4 months in a row of RCs, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Wouldn't. Definitely not the first time.
But yeah, I mean, as far as the mana is concerned, it was mostly fine. I didn't really have too many issues. I certainly want to spend a little bit more time working on the mana base in terms of figuring out what the correct dual land split is, because the best dual lands to play are the Verges, right? In 2-color decks, where if you have a basic land and a Verge, you have a dual land. But as you add more dual lands to your deck, the verges get worse. So that part of it is kind of awkward. I played 12 fast lands, which in a deck with Leaf Liege and Overlord of the Mistmoors, fourth land coming into play tapped is kind of awkward sometimes, which that did happen. But yeah, I don't know. I played against Pixie a bunch. I think I went 4-1 against Pixie in the tournament. And then I think I beat, Gruul twice, the Terror deck, and the Admissions deck. So a lot of Pixie, though.
Would you try it again?
Oh, yeah.
Or you would?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think the Cage deck probably is, if you want to play the Celestia Cage deck, it probably is the single best deck in the format if you can dodge Sunfall. Mm-hmm. And then the next evolution of that is, okay, well, we've decided that Sunfall is 0%. How do we fix that matchup? Counter spells. Okay, we have a baseline. Now we just have to kind of hammer down the mana base. And that's, if you're looking to play a standard tournament upcoming, would highly recommend this deck, if maybe just some slight tweaks to the mana.
And Devin, did you get good advice on your tournament along the way?
What do you mean?
Well, did anyone give you any good pep talks after round one?
So yeah, funny enough, round one, because Stan and I had planned a little testing session Sunday night, and Stan messaged me. He was like, just want to make sure we're all good for tonight. And I was like, he messaged me after round one, which I lost round one, and I was like, well, I'm 0-1, so it's probably going to be a short day. Turns out it was not a short day at all.
And Stan, what did you say back to him in this moment?
5 simple words.
Okay.
Turn that frown upside down.
That was the advice?
Devin, wasn't that the advice?
It was.
And you played with a big beaming smile after that, right?
That is good. Yes, I did. And that is good advice.
It is. You got to play from joy. You got to do everything from joy. Otherwise, what are we doing?
Highlight, we'll just do one quick highlight here. In my win-in, because I was X-1, basically everybody else got the draw, but I had the worst breaker, so I had to play it out, which, funny enough, I want to get the 1 seed, so kind of worked out. But in the win-in, I was playing against Gruul Mice, and it was game 3. I was like, he had 3 creatures in play, I was at 5 life, basically dead on board. I had nothing good in my hand, and I think I had 5 lands in play, and I took 3 of my lands, put them off to the side, and I put the top card of my library face down, to the right, and I was like, okay, I'm preparing my mana for Sunfall, or not Sunfall, Split Up, right? Similar to the Nassif Cruel Ultimatum thing, and I'm like, all right, this top card of my library is going to be a Split Up, and then I tap the 3 mana and flip the top card. Of course, it was a Split Up.
Hell yeah.
It was nice.
Well, Dev, once again, you're an inspiration to us all, and you legitimize our podcast on a weekly basis, so.
I do the best I can.
That's what I tell my wife all the time. The only reason we're here anymore is because Devin keeps us legitimate. Otherwise, who knows?
I don't know.
Who knows?
I don't know if I'd go that far.
I mean, it's amazing though. Devin certainly been on the grind for a long time, but with Stan also queued for an RC. It's an interesting.
We're gonna start testing
spring and late winter here.
A great season in America.
Great season was had by all
in the Northern Hemisphere.
All right, shall we go to the main topic,
please?
Now, Stan, this is the first in a series, as you mentioned. Mm-hmm. It's been a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
The unbans have happened in Modern. We're switching to Modern. The first time in weeks that we have talked about Modern. A month.
I guess. I mean, there was a bonus episode about the best deck in the format.
Oh, yeah.
Regardless. And then prior to that, we talked about the bans and unbans.
And then as soon as that episode aired, 2 days after, you're like, no, I'm off Rhinos and playing Boros. So what the hell happened? Anyways, we'll get to that later. So as part of this journey towards Portland and also Devin towards Charlotte, though Devin doesn't need as much hand-holding as Stan. I think we all know that. We decided that it would be fun, now that it's been a month or so since the unbans have happened, to take a little look at each of the unbanned cards and see what effects they're having on Modern, what we think about them after a month, and just, kind of dissect them. It's not going to quite be the old single card dives that we used to do at the beginning, but maybe we'll get close. We're going to be looking at Faithless Looting from a lot of directions today. So,
and just because it's not the old single card dives doesn't mean it's not a new single card exploration.
True.
We're not doing the old format. We're attempting a new format.
Yeah, a new shorter format, right?
Yeah, a new shorter format called Why Isn't Blank the Best Card in Modern?
Right. I like that framing for it because by being banned,
it
was implied it is implied that all of these cards were at some point the best card in Modern, right? You don't ban cards that aren't the best card, or at least supporting the best card, right?
Okay, I mean, if that's the premise.
If that's the premise, then we're doing it.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with the premise.
The premise that only the best cards in the format get banned?
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that.
That's a sub-premise, at least. That was just an offhand comment. We don't have to worry about it.
That was a logo we were testing on a T-shirt that didn't really pan out.
Yeah. You wouldn't download a ban. So, okay, Faithless Looting.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to start by taking us back to the very, very beginning of Faithless Looting. November.
Mark Rosewater is taking a hike under a waterfall.
Multnomah Falls realizes looting needs to be in red. Actually, I did do a little bit of internet research just now, and I went back to the spoiler thread on MTG Salvation for the card Faithless Looting when it was spoiled by being, here's how this card was spoiled, at least from what I could see from this thread, because the Dak Faden promo was in a comic book.
Oh, I remember that.
And that card hadn't actually been spoiled as part of Dark Ascension yet, but they saw it there and people were trying to speculate as to where it was going to appear. Right?
Yep.
So,
Looting was the promo, right?
Looting was the promo.
Yep.
It was a different art, and it was marked as a rare.
Yeah, I think if you look at the card on Scryfall, it has like IDW as the set symbol.
Right.
Because I think it was IDW
one.
Comics, yep.
Right. But as we know, it was actually a common in Dark Ascension. And I just want to give you some reactions from some people here on November 18th, 2011, just to show you how much things change and how much they stay the same. So first contribution is from the Card Father, who says, doesn't seem red, actually. And yes, it seems way too close to Desperate Ravings. Do you remember the card Desperate Ravings? Desperate Ravings, a generic and a red. It's an instant. Draw 2 cards and discard 1. And it had flashback for 2 colorless and a blue.
Was that random?
It was at random. Yeah, the discard was at random too, which is like a lot worse. Just a lot worse.
Oh, yeah.
Someone says, careful study in red with flashback. Seems pretty good to me. I salute you, BoinkNet, Archmage Overload. Thanks for your contributions. We have someone, the other theme that was on this thread a lot, of course, was Dredge Love. People kept saying, I think this might make Dredge good. This card is powerful. I think this might make Dredge good. And then it took me a long time to realize they were talking about Legacy Dredge. And somebody finally said, hey, if this is in a normal set, this might actually make Modern Dredge a thing. And someone else mentioned Storm.
Well, was Modern even a thing at that time? When was PT Philly? Because this was the date here is March of 2011.
PT Philly,
I think it was like June or July of that year, right?
Was earlier that year.
Okay,
Yeah.
so when Faithless Looting was spoiled, Modern wasn't even a thing yet, right?
No, it was. It would have been
Was it?
6 or 7 months a thing.
Oh,
No,
okay.
not even.
Oh, not even
Philly-
3 months a thing. Yeah.
I'm seeing it was March 9th.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is just like a couple months after that tournament.
Got
Yeah.
it.
So this is the very beginning. Now, I remember when Faithless Looting was spoiled, and I was flummoxed a little bit because I saw people talking about it online and saying, like, this is an awesome card. This is going to be huge and constructed. And I wasn't back enough into constructed Magic yet, I guess, to really understand why it would be good. But it didn't take long for it to be good and for it to do things like people were saying here, such as making Dredge possible, making Storm. I don't know if it ever really had a home in Storm. I never played it in Gift Storm. I don't think it after that. But there were a number of different decks, those Mardu Pyromancer and yada, 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 all the things. So fast forwarding 8 years to August 26, 2019, here's the reasons from the BNR announcement that Faithless Looting was banned. Mm-hmm. As new card designs are released that deal with the graveyard, discarding cards and casting cheap spells, the power of Faithless Looting's efficient hand and graveyard manipulation continues to scale upward. Regardless of Hogak's recent impact, Faithless Looting would be a likely eventual addition to the ban list in the near future. In order to ensure the metagame doesn't again revert to a Faithless Looting graveyard deck being dominant, we believe now is the correct time to make this change. For this same reason, we're choosing not to unban Bridge from Below at this time. Little side note there about all the weirdness that happened in that particular 3-month arc. But it's true. I think, do you all remember that time when we were basically, there was a good year where people were basically just like, this is a Faithless Looting format. You know, we were doing that thing that people do sometimes when they're talking about bans and staples and all this kind of things, where people were comparing it to Brainstorm and Legacy and other things like that, where there were so much Faithless Looting at the time that it really did feel like maybe this is an immovable pillar of the format. And then when they finally banned it, it was a little bit of a shock as well, I think, even though that rationale makes sense.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember like what the format looked like before Hogak got printed. Because I remember, I want to say it was like you mentioned, it was maybe a lot of Dredge and a lot of Phoenix. Those were probably the two best decks around that time, right?
Yeah, definitely okay. Phoenix. I'm not sure if Dredge was definitely good. I don't remember if it was the best, but it was good.
In fact, Dredge really broke before or around the same time that Ross Merriam kind of like made Phoenix break. Because Phoenix and Creeping Chill were in the same set, and I think everyone clocked the power of Creeping Chill immediately because it was free.
Yeah.
And Phoenix, it took a minute for Ross and Co. to kind of figure it out. And there was an SCG Open in Chicago where the promo playmat had like the Goblin Guide and a Planeswalker, like see the multiverse, see Chicago or whatever.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I remember that tournament I attended, Dredge was the most popular deck in the room. KCI was also very, very popular, but a little harder to navigate for people still. And Phoenix was like still being discussed online, but hadn't really broken through into ubiquity in Modern just yet.
And Hollow One was around this time too, right?
Yeah. Hollow One was just before Phoenix, because one of the first decks that I tried Phoenix in was Hollow Phoenix, which was a fun deck for a little bit. Deck I still chase the dragon with occasionally. Maybe I haven't tried it in this cycle, but I mean, don't forget, like in this era of Modern, we're not too far off from people playing Bant Spirits as one of the best lists at the time. You know, like that was a pretty good deck in spring of 2019 and fall and the end of 2018 for sure.
As was Humans and Giftstorm.
Yeah.
And Affinity and Grixis Shadow.
Yeah, Shadow
this
is the other
that era of Modern.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, okay. So they knock one of the pillars out here. Our question today is, I think, Stan said, why isn't it the best card in Modern? I think we're going to look at, is it a pillar of the format? Is it going to be a pillar of the format again? Has time passed it by? That's really the stuff that we're going to talk about today. And so what we have done is all of us have played lots of different decks with Faithless Looting. We've been playing Modern, and so we have observations of other people who've played it against us. So I think we're going to talk a little bit about what the deal with the card is, what decks we've tried, and then try to give like a final discussion about what we think is good and or bad about the card right now and what makes sense from there. But I did want to really quickly go back to the unbannings, which is one of the cards that this excerpt from the unbanning kind of encapsulates the reasoning here. One of the cards that died for Hogak's sins was Faithless Looting. It's a big recasting of the banning thing here, because they basically said, we're not banning it because of Hogak. We think Faithless Looting's a problem anyway. And then right here, they're saying, we got rid of it because of Hogak. Faithless Looting had propped up a multitude of strategies, Arclight Phoenix, Hollow One Dredge, and even some fair mid-range decks like Seasoned Pyromancer, Young Pyromancer, Mardu Pyromancer, blah, 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 blah. 5 years later, we're interested in seeing what Faithless Looting can do without a certain giant avatar rearing its ugly head. Much like with the discussion Mox Opal, we've introduced several anti-graveyard options into Modern since Looting's removal, namely Endurance and Bogart Trawler. Faithless Looting is unbanned in Modern. Where did this rank on the unbans for you? Level of excitement?
Probably the highest, because it, while not obviously the most powerful, I think there was a case at first that like Looting or Opal are probably like among the two most powerful ones. This one kind of like fit my play style more than Opal ever did. And it was clearly going to be more exciting than Splinter Twin, because I think everyone sort of assumed that Splinter Twin's day has kind of come and gone. We'll discuss that in a couple of weeks, of course.
Rip.
and Green Sun Zenith, like Opal, it's just not a stand card.
Right. Right.
So for strictly personal reasons, coupled with the fact that I love playing Faithless Looting in Izzet and Mono Red Phoenix and Rakdos Skelemental
Oh,
prior to the Faithless Looting ban, this one was the one I had the most personal hope for. There's even a time where I figured, why not just put this into Boros Energy to make your Phlages escapable more consistently?
yeah. Yeah.
Turns out Faithless Looting on a 3-mana creature that also can make elemental tokens is a little bit better because you have a Johnny in your deck. But I digress.
However, Devin, how about you?
So, I mean, as far as excitement level is concerned, I would say probably a little bit behind Opal. I mean, as somebody who played Affinity for the better part of 5 or 6 years, like, you know, nothing will ever top Opal for me. And then probably same thing with power level. I think Opal's maybe slightly more powerful, just in a kind of in a vacuum. You know, it's interesting, and I think we'll maybe get to this a little bit later on. The cards that they decided to unban seem to have been a problem in the past, but the sideboard cards that they're printing over the course of the past couple of years have gotten significantly better.
It's not just sideboard cards in this case.
Yeah.
I think we'll find as we discuss a little bit here. But yeah, for me, this was the number one card that I was interested in, definitely, and mostly because it propped up so many different decks, or was a good enabler in so many different decks with so many different types of strategies, even though they're all graveyard reliant. You know, when they mention, I mean, these were all decks that I played back in that era. One of the first decks that I picked up in that era in paper, because I had some of the cards from it already, was Mardu Pyromancer. It wasn't a hard deck to build or buy, and I had lands already. It wasn't as expensive as the Opal decks, for example. So I got there, and then we got into Izzet Phoenix and all those kind of things as like that era evolved. The conventional wisdom that we're going to talk about a lot here today too is, because Stan was just bringing it up, and Spike said this on stream, which I think, and he's kind of said this a bunch of times when people have said, could Faithless go in this deck? Could it go in this deck? You know, to paraphrase him, he's basically like, you can't run Faithless for value. You have to get some kind of synergy or something off of the discards as well. That has to be a part of your plan in order to make Faithless worth it. I think that the question becomes even more complicated than that now.
And that's just sort of historically always been the case, right? There were never any value Faithless decks.
Well, I mean,
you're using its efficiency to set something up.
Right. I would think that the only one that was close to a value Faithless deck was Mardu Pyromancer, which is, you know, you're building the graveyard for Bedlam Reveler, you're discarding
souls.
You're discarding souls and a couple of other synergies like that. But that's the thing that I wanted to point out specifically, because when you say things like, can we run an energy for Phlage? Mm-hmm. Can we run it in a style that's like, that's a synergy, but I don't think it's the type of thing that Everett's talking about. And I don't know if it's the type of thing that really makes Faithless be able to be run right now, which is the different end of the spectrum is what it enables in Dredge, what it enables in Phoenix, what it enables in Reanimator decks. That's kind of a different ball of wax, right?
Yeah, my only counter argument is I think Arena of Glory really kind of factors into this equation here, where if it was just, okay, you're just casting Phlage for 4 mana, putting it into play, then that's fine. But it's almost like Faithless Looting is enabling sort of this Splinter Twin-esque kill with Arena of Glory and Phlage, because whenever you Arena Phlage, they just die on the spot. So I think that probably has to factor into it too, because I've been thinking of the same wavelength as Stan, just putting it into energy. And I think you maybe want one other thing that goes to the graveyard, maybe like a Seasoned Pyromancer kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, great point. The results haven't borne that out yet, though.
Yeah.
You know, the question is, I think people have tried it, right, in that deck. And I guess we can get into this even more, but I think that's the more specific question that we'll be trying to like dial in here is like, is Modern so powerful now and so linear in the synergies or the efficiency on the side of energy or something like that, a more fair deck, that you don't have time in the fair decks to screw around with Faithless Looting, and you can really only use it if you need it for a very specific, very powerful purpose. I do want to talk really quickly about what Faithless Looting is and what it is not. So tell me if you think I'm right or wrong about this. It's a super cheap spell. That's amazing, right? It's 1 mana. The only way it could be less is if it was Phyrexian mana instead. It has flashback, which is great because you get to replay it then. It's card selection. That is what it is. And you have the synergy side by being able to choose what things you discard. I list those as the pros of Faithless Looting. The cons of Faithless Looting, I think a lot of people look at this card and think it's a cantrip, but you have to remember Faithless Looting is not a cantrip. It is card disadvantage. You are spending a card to do a thing that you do not get repaid back for in a card, right? So that's one thing to keep in mind. It's sorcery speed, which, as absurd as it would be to have it be an instant, you don't always have time to play it because it's sorcery speed. Sometimes you need the mana for other things. Sometimes you need to leave mana up for some other reason. And then the other thing is that 2R of flashback, I think, is way more expensive than it used to be in what Modern is. Now, maybe that's a little bit of a spoiler of what some of my takes are going to be at the end of this episode, but it's just, that was one thing that did feel different and slower to me about playing Faithless Looting right now, is it is more difficult to sneak in, I'm going to flashback Faithless Looting. What do you guys think about that as sort of like the objective qualities of the card Faithless Looting today?
I think that makes a lot of sense. One point that you hit on that I kind of sort of agree with is the flashback costing 2 and a red, where it almost feels like if you look at the 3 mana plays that a lot of decks in Modern are making, or plays not even 3 mana plays that they're making on turn 3, turn 3 is sort of like the pivotal point for a lot of different decks. It's either where the Boros decks turn the corner or where the combo decks try and kill you. And if you're spending 3 mana for your Faithless Looting and not really impacting the board, you're not going to really have a good time doing that.
Yeah.
I also think your cons overlook the critical, like, this sets you up for surgical extraction blowouts, Thraben Charm.
Sure.
That's it.
Stan, why do you mention those cards?
They're popular and good.
Yeah.
Right.
Surgical stock hasn't been higher since the ban.
Well, it's a great point that the cons should include Graveyard Hate is stronger than it used to be, which we said, and which does set you up for blowouts, from a number of different things.
Yeah. It basically, it enables you to have like an additional silver bullet against you.
Right. Yeah. Or cards that wouldn't be good against your deck suddenly are good against your deck or whatever. All right. That was my kind of setup. I think from here, it's just decks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we pick decks that have Faithless Looting and each of us can talk about our experiences playing with or against them, or just, we can just make their presences known?
You can also just roll down the list if you want to. It's up to you.
Yeah, exactly. How about let's make their presence known really quick. I can do this pretty rapidly just to give a high level perspective of who's even playing it right now. Mm-hmm. Because it isn't a sudden staple.
No.
There is one deck where it's probably had the most success.
Right.
And that's Jund Creativity.
So far.
That's right. Yeah. Where it's basically a 4 of that enables you to dig towards your creativities, put Archons in your graveyard for persist, and gives that deck a possible new turn 2 combo of turn 1 Faithless, put Archon in your deck, turn 2 persist, play an Archon. And usually that's good enough.
Yeah. And just to mention, the card that was replaced in those lists, just to show the gap between what was available in Modern before and what's available now, is basically Bitter Reunion, which is an enchantment for a generic and a red that lets you discard a card when it comes into play and then draw 2 cards. So it's basically Cathartic Reunion, but it has the little extra text of generic mana, sacrifice this, creatures you control gain haste until end of turn, which is relevant in that deck for Archon to be able to go a bit faster. But yeah, it did unlock a whole new, more efficient enabler for the persist creativity kind of shell.
Yeah, one thing I just want to highlight here, because we go back to kind of what Dave was talking about earlier, where you mentioned how you kind of need to be playing Faithless Looting. You need to get some sort of value off of it. Now, let's be honest, you're not getting a lot of value off of this. I mean, obviously you could, discarding Archon. I wouldn't necessarily call that value though. I would call that you are trying to enact an extremely proactive game plan and get the game over with on, again, that pivotal turn, like turn 3. And it's less about grinding out and discarding a Lingering Souls. That's not what these looting decks are trying to do these days.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Is it's more likely or it seems like it's more likely that you need to use it to enable an extremely powerful plan rather than using it to grind, essentially. And for that, really, you only need the front side of the card, which is also interesting. You know, talking about the flashback problem, it's like maybe we could have just had careful study or something like that. But anyway, so Jund Creativity definitely has looked like the most popular, not most popular, the most winning deck with this. Although, you know, it's fallen off, I feel like, the last couple of weeks. It was kind of popping up in events and stuff like that. And as the metagame has begun to stabilize again, I feel like that deck has kind of faded away from people's top of the metagame kind of mind share at the moment.
Agreed.
Yeah.
All right. Next one and most common decks that it's seen play.
And this is a little bit of a surprise, I think, that it's this deck and not another deck. Rakdos Hollow One.
Yeah.
Kind of like the second most popular Faithless Looting deck at the moment.
Yeah, and also was quite popular / is quite popular if you're playing casually, if you're just kind of like, I keep seeing it in leagues, like all of that kind of stuff. I'm not too surprised that this deck is popular because this deck was almost playable before Faithless Looting was unbanned. Honestly,
a lot of people played it.
It was close. It was, I think that if you remember, I tried it a bunch of times on the podcast towards the end of last year, and I did say, I think this deck is like one card away from being good. Now, I didn't think it was going to be Faithless Looting. That would be the card. But, you know, and as it turns out, it's still not good, right? Like it's...
Maybe it was more than one card away.
It might be more than one card away, as it turns out. But there's another reason for that. And the reason for that is really this deck is so all in on the graveyard that it is... And it has no way to interact with any graveyard hate because it's Rakdos. So unless somebody is playing, you know, artifact-based something like... You know, you can kill their Dalthy Voidwalker, I guess, which, by the way, was a card that turned out, you know, has popped up for me a lot in the last couple of games I've been playing. That was like, whew, that is really hard against Faithless Looting. Hollow One is cool. I've had a lot of fun with it for sure. And there are moments where you do absolutely absurd things with this deck that you can't do without Faithless Looting reliably.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's basically... It's not even playing main deck Thoughtseize, and I'm not seeing like a lot of sideboard Thoughtseizes. So the plan is basically like dodge graveyard hate.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one thing I want to mention, so again, kind of going back to the whole Faithless Looting for value thing. So we mentioned creativity, mostly using it for the 1 mana, just, you know, try and do a busted thing as fast as possible. I would say of all of the decks, this might be the most in between, where it has a good number of things that it wants to put into the graveyard, like card types for Nethergoyf, Izzet Phoenix, and things like that. But you can also use the busted side of Faithless Looting to just enable extremely fast, like turn 1 double 4/4s. So it kind of gets the best of both worlds.
Yeah, that's true. Like I said, the only problem with this is if somebody plays Leyline of the Void against you,
yeah, you're dead.
Half of your, it's unbelievable how bad this deck is against any kind of graveyard hate, though. Literally every card in here does nothing. Like you're attacking with hasted, like hard cast Detective Phoenixes in a game where somebody plays hard that kind of hate against you, and 1/1s, DRCs.
I mean, the reason for my color commentary on this deck being the surprise is because it's also still playing Burning Inquiry. So you're adding a ton of variance, sometimes high risk, high reward.
Yeah. Well, the card that was cut from this deck to make space for Faithless Looting has ultimately turned out to be Goblin Lore, which is actually a card that used to be played in Hollow One with Faithless Looting and Burning Inquiry. So you are going off, but I think this deck, and I haven't compared the lists, but in my memory, this version of Hollow One has more creatures than the previous versions did, where you were just playing the Flameblade Adept, you were just playing Hollow One, and you were just playing Flamewake Phoenix, and that was pretty much what you were doing. There's a lot more creatures in this deck right now, more threats, which makes it a little easier to play the game. Honestly, you're not quite so all in.
Yeah. Yeah. Now it's like a DRC, Nethergoyf, Orcish Bowmaster deck.
Yeah.
On top of the Hollow One package.
By the way, Orcish Bowmasters with Burning Inquiry out is hilarious. Like when you pull that off, you can really some of the games that I've managed to win with Hollow One, even before Faithless was unbanned, was like play out my Bowmasters, use Burning Inquiry to basically take out an Energy's like whole board with Bowmaster triggers, get a 4/4. You know, like it's pretty wild.
Just got to be careful if they got 2 mana open, because if they have their own Bowmasters, then things get
bad.
dicey.
It's really bad.
Yeah.
But this also, I mean, I think it's worth mentioning here as well. The other cards that are really good in this deck, Fear of Missing Out, which we talked about a lot lately, and Detectives Phoenix. You know, Faithless Looting really takes Detectives Phoenix, which was kind of like a fringe card, and turns it into something that is a possible shell to use in different decks if you want to. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it turns out that Hollow One's the best place for all this stuff, or will forever be the best for it. But that core of Faithless, Detectives, Phoenix, Street Wraith, you know, it's really pretty powerful when you can pull that off.
Mm.
Indeed. The next deck we're seeing it pop up is Grixis Reanimator.
Mind if I take this one?
Please.
I played a lot of this deck. So the concept here is you're kind of like blue-black, mostly like the Oculus Frog deck, but then because you have you have Psychic Frog as a way to discard, you know, Oculus and things like that with Unearth, but then because you have Psychic Frog as a discard outlet, you can then get to pair that with Looting and Persist and Archon. So it's kind of sort of like a mishmash of the Frog decks, but also the Persist decks. Looting happens to work fantastically with Tameo, and just kind of like everything here, even just persisting in Oculus, not that bad. It's only -1/-1. Yeah. So I played a bunch with this deck, and I liked it quite a bit. Now, similar to the Hollow One, it kind of has the Hollow One problem where it's all these different plans. They still kind of all utilize the graveyard, where Persist and Unearth, those are offline. Oculus Hardcast, offline. Archon of Cruelty, good luck with that. So really, against Graveyard Hate, you really only have Psychic Frog, similar to how, you know, the last deck has only Hollow One. So it's powerful and fast and does some good things, but for the most part, it's like, not so great against Graveyard Hate.
Yeah. Yeah, for what it's worth, I also played with Grixis. I almost called it Grixis Demir, but like Grixis Murktide, really Grixis Oculus control. It's just that shell with basically the only red card that was thrown in was Faithless Looting, and I found that version to be much worse than the Demir version as well. There's not enough threats. It just felt like the mana wasn't that great, even though I'm trying to flip Tameo and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't coming together for me there, but maybe the addition of the Persist plan helps make it a bit more powerful and a bit more worth stretching into the third color.
Yeah, it's tough because Looting is a card that relies on the graveyard so much, because in order to make it good, you have to synergize with the graveyard in some other means. And if you're putting that into a deck that already was graveyard heavily reliant, it's like it's really hard to formulate a good plan in these post-board games.
Yeah.
And then finally, I think probably the least surprising deck that people are trying to make work with Faithless Looting is Izzet Phoenix.
Yeah.
Same as she ever was.
I mean, should we have the Phoenix talk now? Or, I mean, I kind of feel like we're just kind of doing it as they come up on this list.
The Phoenix talk of whether or not Thought Scouring Yourself is actually good.
I mean, I really enjoy, of all the decks that I played, and I could list them out, but I feel like we're kind of like, we're going to time here a little bit. So it's like,
yeah.
This was the deck that I actually enjoyed and felt the most powerful to me of all the Faithless Looting decks that I played, including Hollow One, including Mono Red Phoenix, including the Grixis list that I was playing, including just like normal Delirium. Like, this deck had some moments where I was like, we're back. Like, why aren't people playing this deck? Like, it really felt like we were back. I played a version with Tameo in it as the 12th, you know, the third set of creatures, basically, creatures 9 through 12 instead of Thing in the Ice. Mm-hmm. And it just felt really powerful. I love that it's a Force of Negation deck. Honestly, I really felt, I don't know, it just felt like it was happening. Like,
so you didn't play against Leyline?
Leyline of the Void?
Yeah.
I didn't, but yeah, I mean, that's
Who's
not
running
great.
Leyline these days?
No, there's plenty of
decks.
decks.
True.
I didn't run into one, but at least with this deck, it's not like at least when you have to hard cast a Phoenix, it's a 3/2 flyer with haste. It's not, you know, it's not Hollow One that costs 5 or what. Not it's like not Nethergoyf where you're just basically like, I'm casting an 0/1 that will forever be an 0/1.
Even Even a free Demolich is fine too.
Yeah, a Demolich is okay. I mean, I had truly absurd turns where I was like, okay, I'm going to bring back 3 Phoenixes and 3 Demolich in the same turn and just like completely fill the board and be like, okay, what are you going to do? And then have Force of Negation in my hand if they tried to sweep or something for at least one get out of jail free card. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I was really enjoying playing Phoenix.
I played it too. This is the Faithless deck that I got the most reps in. I dabbled with creativity in tournament practice, but this one actually ran through a league. And I know where you're coming from, Dave. But that's what when I say same as it ever was, like it uses better cards now. Like some lists are running Preordain. Obviously, we have Consider now as well.
Yeah.
Sink into Stupor was awesome.
Yep.
I would say it's just like sometimes it's a land, sometimes it's a reactive spell, sometimes you throw it to a Force of Negation. Still, clearly something is going wrong because other than whoever Dingo 34 is, like this deck is not crushing it. And Dingo 34 is kind of just like carrying the banner by himself.
Yeah.
Not young Dingo 34?
I don't think it's young Dingo.
No, it's not.
It's old Dingo. Devin, what have you thought about Phoenix when you've seen it, played it? What do you think about its place in the meta, aside from my anecdotal love?
You know, I gotta be honest with you. I have not played the blue-red version myself. My Phoenix experience has been with mono red.
Yeah.
Which, spoiler alert, that deck sucked. Don't play mono red.
Yeah.
But I've seen Spike play a little bit with it. It looked fine at times. Like you said, it has some very explosive draws. But, you know, the thing that we keep coming back to is like, and maybe this is a segment we'll get to at some point in today's episode, is how are these cards beating the graveyard hate? And if your opponent is showing up with an exponential amount of it because they expect a lot of, like Breach or things like that where graveyard hate's good, then you need to figure out something else that your deck does. And I think that's why the creativity deck has been the most successful, is its backup plan is just pay 4 mana cast creativity. It doesn't care about the graveyard.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I spent a lot of time this weekend playing mono red Phoenix. Not really mono red, actually. I looked at the lists that were up. It's funny, I didn't see the list that you posted until just when we started recording. I actually got to a list that was kind of similar to yours, although I played 20 creatures in mine, 4 Questing Druid.
So it's only 16. That
right.
Yeah.
So I played Questing Druid over Light Up the Stage because I hate Light Up the Stage these days.
I do too.
I played, I'm not playing Lava Spike. So like all the lists that I saw had Lava Spike. So I basically took the mono red Phoenix that is burn based, that has like Lava Spike and Gut Shot and all that stuff. And I switched it over to like the Gruul Prowess shells that people were playing before this. So where it was kind of like, okay, I'm going to play that. I'm going to play Mutagenic Growth. I'm going to play Slick Shot. I'm going to cut Soulscar Mage and, I'm going to play DRC and Bauble. So like, it was a little of a bit of an awkward marriage, but I had a couple moments where it felt like it was cooking, but it was never cooking because of like early explosive Phoenixes. It was more like Phoenix was a backup plan for later in the game if I needed an explosive turn 6.
That is exactly how I felt.
Yeah. Yeah. I was really proud of myself for like brewing a list, like putting together pieces from other lists and being like, this seems like it could work. Here's another thing, like just randomly, I know we want to go fast in mono red Phoenix and we hate tap lands, but can't we just play one Surveil land? Like
I had one.
I put one in my list.
Yeah.
None of the lists I saw online had one. And I was like, we got to have one Surveil land if we whiff on turn 1.
No, I had one. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, even turn 2, you just like, you play your 1-drop and then turn 2, play a second 1-drop, tap land, set up for turn 3. Like, it's fine.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, play Surveil lands, people. They're good. They're good even in aggro decks, okay? I promise you. 1 is fine. All right.
But 2 is better.
2 is better, yeah. Anyway, rip Mono Phoenix for now. So how do we want to pull this to an end? Because we got other decks to talk about. Devin played Asmo.
We don't have to talk about that stuff. I mean, Asmo's okay. It's not fantastic. Looting is a good enabler for Asmo. Lets you, utilize extra copies of Daredevil. Problem is, as usually as it goes with Asmo, there's a lot of anti-artifact stuff right now, given how prevalent Mox Opal is and Breach and things like that. And deck still cannot beat the card Meltdown. So Again, it's one of these things, just sideboard cards. Captain Cannoneer kind of helps, but it's only to an extent. Psychic Frog also good backup plan, but I feel like it's close, but not quite there.
Yeah.
Let's take a minute to talk about why creativity isn't popping off, considering that it's perhaps the most successful Faithless Looting deck. And Devin, as you pointed out, like it also has perhaps the strongest plan B that's not reliant on a vulnerable graveyard synergy. Because here's my theory is that Archon of Cruelty is not as powerful as it used to be.
Yeah.
And unless they get it out on turn 2, thanks to Faithless Looting, sure, that's not even a guarantee, but that's kind of like your best case scenario. A turn 4 Archon of Cruelty facing down like a board full of cat tokens or a board full of the tokens that Abhorrent Oculus makes. Like that seems rough. I also think it's just a poor environment for that type of combo deck in general. There's faster combo decks in the format. UB Frog being a counterspell deck is really problematic. That also runs Thought Seizes periodically.
Yeah.
Like I think that's a huge problem. Like it having spell pierce for creativities and spell snare for persist. And, on the off chance that they get down an Archon, like they have either a bunch of tokens because of the Oculus or they might just like kill it with Shoot the Sheriff.
Yeah, I think another part of it too is the Boros matchup, where if you are trying to go for a creativity on, say some 1/1 tokens and your opponent plays a Goblin Bombardment, good luck with that. You can't do that. And the other thing is too, against the turn 2 Archon draws, like sure, sometimes they happen, but if the Boros player is on the play, a lot of these Boros lists are main decking 3-bin Charm, so you can't really do that a lot. And if it's, not exactly turn 2, they've already established a couple of creatures in play with like an Ocelot Pride or something. They have extra bodies to sacrifice. Galvanic Discharge just kills the Archon for 1 mana. So it's there's if Boros Energy is the most popular deck, I think that the core like Boros package just lines up very well against creativity as well.
Did you mention Static Prison?
No, but that's also one too. Yeah.
They just cast the Static Prison.
Yeah.
Sayonara. And there's also like Boros Energy is playing main deck Blood Moons. Dimir Oculus is playing main deck Harbingers.
Yeah.
They have Harbingers.
Yeah.
So it's like mana disruption is at an all-time high.
That's another reason I didn't
we're
like
not
the
playing
Grixis Frog by the way, is because you couldn't play Harbinger anymore.
Yeah.
Personal and professional reasons. I do have a question for you guys. So you did a bit of a grudge match, right, to test Faithless Looting in
Bring
this.
it on.
So what was
Sort
the
of.
idea here?
It was my idea.
Okay.
So my take was, based on what we're seeing with performance of like these Faithless Looting decks aren't really taking off. Is the problem Faithless Looting, or is the problem that the decks that Faithless Looting enables just can't keep up with the top end of the format right now? Right? Which I think that might be our ultimate hypothesis
Starting
or
to
conclusion.
feel that way.
I was wondering, like, does that mean a Hogak deck, which was probably the pinnacle of Faithless Looting deck building, has some of the same vulnerabilities that Dredge, Phoenix, Creativity, etc. do as well? And I think the answer we found there was no. Hogak is still.
What were the results of that, huh?
The results is Stan won a game.
Yeah, you did win a game.
We played what, 6 games?
The funny
Five,
thing
6?
about that set is I don't even think I cast Faithless Looting like maybe once. I just beat the crap out of you with Hogak. So
you played Hogak versus Energy? Is that what it was?
Yeah,
that's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sounds brutal for Energy.
I just like playing that deck again. Side note, how the hell did that card get printed? I have no idea. But.
Ask Tom Ross about it.
Yeah, and I guess the conclusion we found from that experience is that like Faithless Looting in Essential, Hogak a bit too good.
Yeah.
A little bit.
You don't say.
It's just, and it's only too good because it has trample. Just get the trample off of there, and maybe Hogak could be unbanned. Errated.
Okay.
Functional reprint.
I love it.
It's the arena version.
you just mentioned Dredge for the first time. We didn't talk about Dredge at all other than the intro. People have been trying it and playing it.
And they can't get past a trophy list.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I saw a single one challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Sodek, I thought, did well in a challenge with it one time in the last month. But I lost to it one time for sure with one of these. I think with Hollow One, I lost to it because they can still fill the board sometimes if you don't interact with them. But, we're both having a gentleman's agreement to not play Graveyard Hate in that one. And guess who does better when there's no Graveyard Hate?
Well, speaking of which, this is kind of what we were alluding to earlier, and I don't know if we want to wrap this up with this final comment, but kind of the big overarching theme here is that the reason that Faithless Looting is not necessarily performing as we would maybe expect it to is just how good the Graveyard Hate has gotten. There's main deck 3-bin charms, there's endurances floating around, there's Soul Guide Lanterns out of Urza Saga. Every single deck has some sort of extremely targeted, surgical, powerful Graveyard Hate, and you just can't avoid that.
I don't think it's the Graveyard Hate is the problem. That wasn't the conclusion I actually came to.
Really?
I think I can agree with you, Devin, that that's one of the problems.
Sure. That vulnerability exists, yes. But when I did my Phoenix League, which I free rolled, by the way, 3-2.
Great job.
I didn't face any Graveyard Hate. Sometimes the deck just was too slow and dirtily. Like, the format with Modern Horizons is so optimized, and the Modern Horizons impact hasn't lent itself to Faithless Looting cards, except maybe with some of the cards you're seeing in the Hollow One deck specifically, because that one has DRC and Nethergoyf and Orcish Bowmasters, which I guess is like a Horizons era card.
Let's call it one. I mean, one game that I played with Phoenix, I played against that black-white taxes list, that Aether Vial list that's floating around.
Yep.
But really the core of that deck is what
for me.
Yeah, the core of that deck is what has been a plague across Modern in the last couple of years, which is I'm going to play a pitch elemental, and then I'm going to ephemerate it, or I'm going to not dead yet it, or whatever. And I think that they killed I think they got all 4 of my Phoenixes with a single Solitude. I seriously think I went turn 3, here's 3 Phoenixes, and then turn 4, I managed to get the other one, and they exiled all of them.
Yeah.
It just takes 2 ephemerates.
When I fired up Phoenix, this was the first deck I played against, and this is 2 weeks ago. We were planning to talk about Faithless Looting last week, but Devin had to go and run super hot at the Spotlight Series. So this Orzhov deck has kind of been stewing for a couple weeks. This was the first deck I played against in my testing, and I was just like, are you trying to beat Phoenix decks? There's just nothing I could do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe Taxus style Solitude shenanigans, maybe that was always good against the Phoenix strategy. But I think the point also stands that that's just one example of a format where things are so optimized. You get so much value off of so little mana between threats and interaction that the graveyard being an extension of your hand and just filling the board for very little mana in and of itself with kind of a relatively slower setup, that's just not what Modern is about right now. And Faithless needs more cards that do things on a Modern Horizons power level rather than doing the old things before Hogak got it banned.
And when it all boils down to is, even if you take the best Hollow One draw or the best Phoenix draw, are any of these draws even good against turn 1 Guide of Souls, turn 2 Ocelot Pride, turn 3, Ajani or whatever? The Boros deck is kind of the litmus test for the entire format right now. I think we can all agree with that. And the Boros deck is just doing everything at such a high efficiency and such a high clip, and it has all these exile removals, and it forces you to have removal every single turn. You can't take a turn off, and I just don't think these decks can compete with them.
But you know what deck I thought would compete with that really didn't, was mono red. Because I'm Lava Dart's got to be okay, right? If I get an Ocelot Pride off the front end of a Lava Dart, I am loving it.
Yeah. The thing is, if you try to play a long game against Boros, you just get buried by Flage.
Right.
So you can't even do that.
Flage.
Yeah.
Flage is a problem too.
Not to mention Guide of Souls is 2 toughness.
Well, I didn't say Guide of Souls though, because I'm implying that you would have to have a lightning bolt to like make this go. But
And maybe that's also part of the problem with this format, that we're not really a removal heavy format where we're playing point removal to deal with threats. Like, yes, galvanic discharge and shoot the sheriff, I guess, like are kind of popular, static prison, whatever, leyline binding.
I think removal is extremely good in this format, is what it really is. But it's solitude and leyline binding and stuff like that that's incredible. And it's like the slower cards that you could put in a shell with Phoenix. Not slower, like the burn cards are not as good as they used to be.
Yes, and maybe that's what it would take for something like Phoenix to keep up. Like, it would have to be playing 4 bolt, 4 axe, 4 gut shot, or something of the ilk. But it's the list I'm just like happen to be randomly looking at right now plays 6 main deck removal spells total.
Is it playing 4 bolts, 2 unholy heats, or
4 bolts, 2 gut shots? Oh, and 1 lightning axe, so that's 7.
Yeah.
Not enough, but it has a billion cantrips, and it's just like, if you're spending your time just cantripping, spinning wheels, you have, even if it's not Boros, you have Oculus that's like also setting up a big control lock that then turns into a 3-mana Murktide that's putting down additional threats every turn.
Can I try to sum up this whole thing with, I think, maybe like one statement? It used to be broken enough to get card selection for a single mana in Modern. Now, most of the things that we actually do are free or cost a single mana to do them. And so you don't want to like spend your time drawing cards. You want to spend your time playing the cards that you already have. You don't have time to do it. That's kind of how it felt to me a little bit. I do think paradoxically there's a weird thing that might come out of this though, which is that because the combo enablers are so mid for Faithless Looting right now, there might be a chance that it finds a home in a really synergistic fair deck a la Mardu Pyromancer again. And I feel like if that happens, when it happens, the card that will drive that is Tamiyo. Because Tamiyo flipping is amazing. On like turn 2, flipping that with Faithless Looting, I had a lot of doubts about that. Like I was even asking Devin a couple episodes ago, I was like, how good really is a flip Tamiyo? Yada, yada, yada. It's very good. When I was playing Phoenix, I definitely killed someone by alting Tamiyo on like turn 4. And I, like just flip it, bring it up. There you go. Could you even do it on turn 4? Maybe it was turn 5. It was like
turn
the
5.
You could possibly do it.
Yeah, turn 5.
It was like the game went 1 turn more than it should have, and I just did that, and that was game.
Yeah, I think closing thought for me is I sort of agree with everything Dave said. I think I maybe disagree on specifically like the fair aspect of it, because I really do think that there is a looting Flage deck out there. And I know that Spike was experimenting with like Just Guy Control. He also had Tamiyo too. But I wonder, like, if we just, Stan, we gotta try some testing for the RCs. Let's just put looting in Boros.
Yeah.
Let's just run it.
Don't you think that that's kind of it though? Like putting it paradoxically, it could be good in a deck that's not using it for a broken combo. That's where I'm at now, is that someone's going to play it because it works well with Flage and Tamiyo, maybe. Exactly.
Well, what if the broken combo we're trying to enable is just Flage Arena?
Yeah. Is that broken? Is that as broken as Dredge?
I think so.
It might. I mean, ultimately it might be.
Yeah. It's just 9 damage.
It's 12.
Well, in the long run. Side note, Tamiyo, -7. Is that the strongest ult in Modern right now on a Planeswalker? Like, name something scarier that someone can slowly do with a walker at the moment.
I mean, I'm pretty sure there's walkers that just say minus, like, ult, you win the game, but...
Yeah, but they don't cost 1 mana.
No, they don't cost 1 mana.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So, Faithless, powerful card in an impowerful environment for it is kind of the bottom line.
Turns out Hogak was the problem all along.
Right.
Yeah. We should just unban it just for fun.
I'm down.
Let me play my old fun cards. The game I won against you, I just surgical to Hogak, and all the other cards are really bad.
That is true. But I didn't have Hogak, I lost.
Fair enough.
Fancy that. Next week, shall we talk about Opal?
At
I'm
least
down.
we might have to talk about Opal and Zenith next week, potentially, depending on how many weeks we have left until the RC. But yes.
All right. So we're definitely talking about Opal. Maybe one more card.
Maybe.
I think if we're gonna like shack up 2 cards together, one of them has to be Splinter Twin.
I know.
There's so little to say.
Sadly.
Like 10-minute segment.
I mean, there's kind of little to say about Green Sun Zenith too, right? It's basically, hey, do you like Titan?
How about these Titans?
And the rest of the episode will be me going, I did see one Druid list that came in like 16th in a challenge.
There's that one Yawgmoth guy.
Oh, there's Yawgmoth. Yeah, it's in Yawgmoth too. That's right. But anyway, that wraps up this week's show, right, Stan?
We did it. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you get the latest episodes as soon as they come out. And if you use Apple Podcasts, please leave us a rating and review. If you'd like to submit a question to the podcast or just reach out to us in general, find us on Blue Sky, search for The Dive Down. Blue Sky handles are just like so hard to read.
They really are.
It's like .bsky.social, I think.
Yeah. .newgrounds.
.4chan.
You can just email thedivedown@gmail.com as well if you really want to get in touch.
Yeah.
You can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/thedivedown. We got a store at thedivedown.com/store. We got some great partners who we affiliate with. Heavy Play. Get some incredible deck and dice boxes and playmats featuring the Equip Mag system. Use promo code TheDiveDown2024 for 10% off your first order there. ManaTraders.com gets you a 25% credit after you've subscribed with them for 3 months using promo code TheDiveDown. As always, special thanks to the bands Nora and Spaceblood for letting us use their music. And until next week, get out there and draw 2, discard 2.